Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran, and we're back after a couple of weeks being off. I was out in Chicago and Washington, D.C. for last week, freeze my butt off. But Rob, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks here. How you been?
I'm doing fine. Still going down to Los Angeles for 3 days a week, and then back up to Seattle on Fridays. So I'm doing great, and it's great to be back doing the show again this week. It was good to take a week off, but it's great to have Clayton on the show, and we should probably dive into that.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce Clayton for us.
Well, Clayton Morris is joining us here on the show, and he's a longtime podcaster, but he also does a show or shows, I'm not quite sure, on the Fox News network. I think it's Fox and Friends, right, Clayton? Is that what your current show is? But
yeah, I've been doing that for 6 years, the weekend show, yeah.
So when does that air? It's early in the morning, right?
Yeah, 6 to 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, so
Okay.
bright and early on the weekend. And then I found out today or yesterday, because I said to my wife, when is daylight saving time? She said, I think it's in a few weeks. And then I did a little Siri'd it up on my phone. When is daylight saving time? And Siri just gave me the middle finger and said, it's tomorrow. So you lose an hour of sleep tomorrow. So for most people, don't care because it's a weekend and they don't really care. But for the rest of us who have to get up and do morning television, that extra hour is a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Oh well. But it's good. It's good also because we get more light later in our day. So that's good.
That's true. That's true.
So I just wanted to let the audience know, too, we had a splitter go bad, and so this morning I'm patching Clayton's video through the TriCaster a little different way, and the frame rate is not as high as it normally would be, so I apologize on that if he looks a little bit choppy, but the audio is good. So one thing I've always wanted to ask, Clayton, you guys, you start at 6 a.m. What do you have to do? Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2, or what time do you have to wake up?
Yeah, I get up around 3:30, somewhere in there, and shower. Try to get a good shave if I can. Sometimes half my face will be shaven and unshaven, so that's always the dark with bleary eyes. And then I get into work and just start pounding through the newspapers and topics for the day, and try to read the New York Times sort of cover to cover, and see what we're kind of chatting about for the day. But yeah, up early and trying to prepare as quickly as I can. And in fact, I built a speed reading application. Rob, I don't even know if I told you this a while ago, but about 2 years ago, I wanted something so that in the morning I could speed read through the news. And so I needed to read like hundreds of articles. And I was like, God, if I could just do this more quickly and actually have my comprehension go up. So I built an app called Read Quick, and working really hard right now on an Android version of it, but it's in the iOS store. And it basically, you can pull in your Pocket account, your Instapaper account, or your Readability account, and just I would save all the articles that we're kind of working on for the show and go through like 100 articles and just blast through them in like just a few minutes instead of like an hour and a half worth of time. So it was the first speed reading application in the App Store. And now a couple of other competition has crept up. The competition's good, but yeah, we were the first.
For me, it's the same thing. I typically sit here in the studio and work all day, and then, in the evening, I have to start my show prep about 6 o'clock in the 6 o'clock in the evening for my tech show, and then it's like I try to jam 400 sites into about 90 minutes of just trying to find those 30 good stories they're going to talk about. Maybe I'm going to have to check your app out and see what it does, because maybe it'll help me in the prep. My biggest challenge has always been on that type of preparation is tagging stuff, because, once you find it, you want to be able to save it so you can come back to it real easy. So you guys got tagging built into your app too?
Well, I mean, because the tagging that we work with is, through Pocket or through Instapaper. So, we don't have like a nested folder structure in there, but the way that most people, we kind of go with what our users say. If we get, we've, fortunately tens of thousands of users, and I listen to them. And so a couple of the big features, we're about to drop a huge update in the next few weeks, actually, completely redesigned, and I just cannot wait because it's just beautiful. We love the current design, but it's more iOS 7 friendly, and so being able to just, I'm like you, going through pages and I forget to tag things. So I'll just randomly hit the stuff and save it to Pocket. And then, okay, I know I've got 15 articles I want to pound through real quick. I launch Read Quick and then just hit the playlist and boom, fly right through them all. So
that's cool.
I know for show prep, it's huge. And I know like my wife, does tech shows as well. So when she's on whatever, Twitter, Tech News Today or something like that, and they've got like 50, 60 stories to get through, she always kind of does show prep using the app too, which is really helpful.
So Clayton, what's the experience in the app as far as, does it scroll the text by really fast, or does it highlight things, or how does it actually function to help you speed read? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I looked long and hard at this. I'd been obsessed with speed reading since I was a kid, and basically it flashes one word on the screen at a time, and there's been quite a few. So when you launch the app, you can set it. I think we have it set as a default at 250 words a minute. Most human beings can read at about 250 words per minute. That's the way their eyes are set. That's the way we kind of consume content. The idea, though, is to get you past the point of subvocalization. So subvocalization is when you're reading something to yourself internally. You were sitting there reading a novel and you're voicing everything to yourself. We want to get past that point, because then your comprehension actually goes up when you get your subvocalization out of the way. I always use the analogy, when you're standing in Times Square, your brain is seeing all of those advertisements, but you're not reading them to yourself, but your brain sees words as photographs. So the idea is to present the one word on the screen at a time really, really fast. And you'll notice within like a few days, you're up over 500 words a minute. You'll be up over 550 words a minute. I had one grandmother who wrote me, she was 75, and she said, I just bought your app. I'm skeptical though. And I tried it, and it was way too fast for me. She said, so I downgraded it to 100 words a minute. And I wrote her and I said, look, I guarantee you in a few days you're going to be doubling that reading rate. And she wrote me back all skeptical. She said, I doubt it, but I'll give it a shot. She wrote me literally the next day, and she says, I'm already up to 200 words a minute. And she said, I am shocked. So I was very flattered by that. But it's been getting some press lately, actually, because there was out of Barcelona at Mobile World Congress, there was a company that just came out and kind of basically took our idea. And it's been getting some press. This thing called Spritz, which I think will be kind of built into Samsung phones. But so everyone's been writing me on Twitter. They're like, hey, this looks awfully familiar, like Read Quick. Yes. I wonder where they got the idea. We've been in the App Store for 2 years.
I can't imagine.
A buddy of mine had came and said, hey, looks like copyright infringement with Spritz.
Yeah.
So it was actually, I was like, what's Spritz? I wasn't familiar with your app prior to really yesterday, so I had a chance to download it. But it was kind of funny that one of my longtime fans he was attuned to what was going on. So very well known. So it's kind of interesting. We've seen a lot of folks in it that are, I guess for a better word, mainstream media, doing a lot of podcasts, and you look at what Adam Carolla has done and a variety of other celebrities. You're in the news division. Actually, not necessarily. I guess it's news. You guys do a talk show every morning. How do you make that transition then to going to doing podcasting? Because it's obviously a little bit different of an audience, isn't it?
It is, and I find I don't know that there's much of a transition. I think if you just enjoy the medium of broadcasting, which I have since I was a little kid, I used to sneak downstairs and watch Letterman and Carson when my parents thought I was in bed. So I've always been obsessed with the medium of broadcast. And I even was obsessed with Letterman as a kid. And, he always talked about the shortwave radio and growing up and just listening to radio. And I used to sit in my room at night and listen to Phillies games on my Walkman when my parents thought I was in bed. There's a common theme of me tricking my parents into thinking I was in bed. And I would listen to Phillies games and broadcasts. And I was always just so, inspired and fascinated by the power of broadcasting, right? That we're sitting here in front of microphones. We have an opinion about something. We might be, some people, might be experts in some sort of field or otherwise, and having a conversation. And I think there's something really intimate and special about podcasting, in that you get to have this experience in someone's ears, in earbuds, while they're walking their dog, right? With podcasting, they have to choose to download your content. Yeah. It's appointment viewing, right? Or appointment listening. They choose to download it. They choose to put it in their ears on their morning commute. They expect it at a certain time. They get really excited about it. I know that I do. I'm that same way with podcasts. So when I think there's an intimacy there that you might not get from general broadcasting. And I think that's reflected even in some of the sponsorships and advertising, that people are, making eggs and bacon for their family in the morning and getting the kids out the door. And you might not be paying attention to the screen. You might have it on as background noise while you're doing something else. You might be just listening to it, maybe 50% of the time. I think with podcasts and some of this new media, I think the level of engagement is probably higher. I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't have any metrics necessarily, but I think the choices and the conversation can be very effective. And although my broadcast on Fox and Friends, we have highly engaged viewers. So when we ask a question on the show, I'm going to get thousands of responses, and people will immediately write about something. So, but I think there is a level of intimacy that you get with podcasting. Plus, I get to do it for longer. Segments on our show are like 4 minutes. Being able to have a conversation like with you guys. We can dive into topics a little bit more deeply than we can with 4 or 5 minutes before a commercial break.
I think what we're finding a lot of times now is, just recently we've had a upsurge, which is a good thing, and media buyers looking to buy advertising in shows, and I'm finding myself explaining the medium a lot more than what I have in the past couple of years, just because some folks are trying to come up to speed, and I'm trying to explain this thing. Basically it's an engagement type of listening experience where, like you said, people are purposely pressing play and they're listening on purpose, and the, the engagement's higher. And I think some of the media buyers are still struggling with that a little bit, because, they're sort of they go out and buy YouTube, or they go buy whatever digital media. But the radio buyers understand it completely. And I think they're the folks that are most excited about the space, but didn't necessarily want to get into talk about the advertising space. But it is a good sign that they're starting to wake up and look at the media a little closer, or look at the medium a little closer after 10 years.
It is a little bit more difficult to track and be able to put a number to engagement too. It's a human experience. It's not something that you can quantify very easily. So that I think is part of why we've struggled in that area. Is I think that's why direct response advertising has been so successful, is because people that do listen to this stuff are, like you say, are very engaged, but and that drives them to tend to take action to help support the host and the show and things like that. I think it's a very much like I still think that like a donation model also works well with the certain shows that really connect with their audience, and I think that's a reflection of the power of the medium. But it is difficult from an advertising perspective to quantify that.
Right, I think it is, and I think so many media buyers. Although we may be seeing a sea change in this, but a lot of media buyers, I think, are from that old school mentality that if you can go into your manager and say that you bought a billboard, or you went in there and you're able to say to them, hey, we bought, these time slots during the Simpsons episodes at 6 p.m. for our local car dealership, the manager is likely to say, great job. Or you say, we bought this amount of podcast time. They're going to say, what? There is a learning curve there. But I think for the advertisers who have gotten on board with it, they're seeing incredible rates of return, because they're able to have a highly engaged audience, and they're able to get in. I don't want to say the ground floor, but we're still in early days of this. I think we're really starting to see a bit of an awareness, but also I thought we were going through a down period with podcasting there for a little while. But it seems like we're seeing an incredible renaissance as businesses are now beginning to realize the value in getting their messages out via podcasts as well. It's another way that Google can measure search results, right, for a website. Gone are the days when even Matt Cutts from Google, I think, recently wrote a post about the idea of guest posting on blogs as a way to drive blog traffic has really seen its last days. There's people, there are people started paying for guest posts, so that really is hurting. So the real value in a website can be measured now, not only by just the great blog content that you're producing and keeping on your website, but also, do you have a podcast? Do you have a video series that you're featuring on your website? And as Google and Bing and Yahoo begin to search through and make sure that these websites are bringing real value to people, they're looking at the depth of these websites. And if a podcast is sitting there, that's real valuable content and likely to be indexed higher in search results.
You guys.
So Clayton, do you see more, mainstream kind of media folks and others having a desire to get involved in the on-demand kind of digital medium more, or is part of the hesitation there? Is there some contracts that keep some anchors or some really good on-air talent from moving over and doing this and going direct, more kind of like what you've done? I think you've been a little bit of a pioneer in making that leap, because there's a lot of folks that have big followings and their TV shows and things like that not doing it. And I'm just wondering what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, I think some of it can be laziness. I think some of it can be, just, well, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing this daily show, and what do I need to worry about doing the internet thing for?
Right.
Like there's some ignorance there. I think, it could be like 5 different things. I think those are 2 of them. I think there's also, for me, it's an extension of me, of who I am and my brand, right? I cover technology. So if I'm not online and I'm not, talking and doing podcasts and having this conversation about new media, then I'm failing in some capacity. I need to be aware of this stuff. Otherwise, then, it's not really smart for me and my brand to not be covering what's going on with Netflix and Aereo and this sort of new media space, which absolutely fascinates me. Anytime I get involved in a conversation about these sorts of things, about the way that we're going to be consuming content in the future, you can't shut me up. But I think you're seeing some anchors. I think you're some people who are aware they're putting out podcasts, like the Rachel Maddow show is obviously a hugely successful podcast. On when you see that being publicized, whether it's across any of the different platforms out there, and then there's some shows that do pretty well. Obviously, you see like what NPR stuff does pretty well as podcasts. So I think some people are aware of it as another way to reach audiences. I'm always shocked, though, that certain shows just aren't available as a download.
It's true.
I mean, really, at this stage of the game, like I can't just. I'm really surprised by it. But you've got old media mentality in a lot of places, and it's just like, why are we going to put our time, energy, and resources into uploading something to a server so somebody can download it later? Why shouldn't they be watching it live? They just don't understand why someone wouldn't want to watch it live.
I had exactly. But I think there's also different expectations too. A couple of weeks ago, maybe it was 3 weeks ago, had an opportunity for a reality star that was doing a podcast. We talked to their team about some advertising and, basically put the proposal in front of them, and they came back and they were like, this proposal is insulting. We won't do anything for under, this number of digits. And I was like, well, you only have, this number of audience members. So, even though you're a celebrity, if you can think you can get your audience, it's brand new to, so there was this unrealistic expectation of how much money they should earn. And I said, listen, if you get your audience to 100 or 200 or 250,000 folks, we can talk about that kind of a number, and it was a pretty big number. But I said, right now, no, you don't deserve that. And I tell you, it was quite contentious. And I was trying to be very, very nice. I didn't want to, for a better word, piss that person off and lose potential, future revenue. But they had really unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, it is interesting because I'm just launched this past week. I was telling you guys before the show this a new podcast called Ethical Entrepreneur, and where I interview entrepreneurs as part of a long-term project that I'd like to eventually perhaps put out a book in a few years. And see if there are common themes that run through talking to entrepreneurs who are building great businesses in this country and around the world, and who are doing it ethically and bringing real value to the world. And we're doing it 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and it's a lot. It's a lot of work. But I haven't really thought about any sort of monetization strategy yet, and that'll have to come. So if you're trying to build something of value and you need immediate return on investment, maybe podcasting isn't the way to go if you don't have any sort of a large audience or following right away. But yeah, it takes time, right? It takes time and promotion and dedication and consistency. I think that's the biggest thing, right, with podcasting, is the consistency. I like to make sure that people know that at 8 a.m. on their morning commute, they're going to have an episode of The Ethical Entrepreneur, so they can download it and go every day. And it's those days that you miss it, or it's those days that, it's suddenly, it's only 3 days a week now and 2 days a week, and it's kind of popping up on a Friday, and it's, it just that does not bode well to building an audience, I've found.
Yeah, as I've told people for years, people build you into their life. They expect you, I do my tech show every Monday and Thursday, and they expect that. Of course, I'm out here in Hawaii, so I've got a little bit of advantage that, it'll pop Tuesday morning and Friday morning. And, I'm good. So I record in the evenings, which is, from a live standpoint, really doesn't work well because of my time zone. But, if that show's not available Tuesday morning, they're emailing me like, where's the show?
Right.
and sometimes they're not nice about it, because they're like, I expected this to be available. Yeah. So you're absolutely correct on the consistency.
My friend John Gruber, who runs a website called Daring Fireball, I had messaged him I had texted him one day because I was like, it was during the summer, and I expected to hear his podcast while I was mowing the lawn. Like, it was my Friday routine to mow the lawn and listen to his podcast, and I enjoy his show. He's a friend, so I was like, I texted him like, where's the show? He's like, I'm at the beach. I'm like, what's with you? And I'm like, you and Congress are taking the summer off. Like, here you have a guy who's mowing his lawn, and I want to hear a podcast, And I was, but it is true. It is true. People expect it, and you better deliver. Otherwise, you're going to see your audience suffer.
Clayton, you're so demanding of him. My goodness.
I know.
Well, yeah, I've had that happen too. With my shows over the years too. It's like, they would also complain because my show was either too short or too long, right? So they had like a 45-minute commute or whatever, and they wanted my show to be 45 minutes, so they would be perfect with their commute, so they didn't have to listen to for 10 minutes or 15 minutes on the way home. They wanted to listen to so they have their routines, right? That they have to stick to, and they get upset if they can't, if it doesn't fit there.
Well, we're creatures of habit,
Yes, we are. That's our nature. That's how we can manage our lives on a day-to-day basis. We have to simplify, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
5 days a week's a big commitment. I really I take my hat off to you to do that, because I've got a buddy. He was doing 5 a week, and he lasted. How long did Andy last?
He did for quite a few years. He probably did for what? 5 years, 6 years?
5 or 6 years, and his was heavily scripted. So I hope, that you're not doing a heavily scripted show 5 days a week, because...
No, I hate scripts, so I'm not a heavily scripted person. No, it's, and I try to do a lot of these interviews back to back on a day. So I'm batch processing them and really working. I mean, the editing process for me that's one of the most time consuming portions of, as you guys know. And so, eventually I hope that I'd be able to hand off some of these duties as it grows. But right now it's all me all the time, and that's fine right now. But my goal is, can I bring incredible value to people? And it's really fulfilling a need and a niche that I thought needed serving. Like, I loved highly actionable pieces of information from an entrepreneurial perspective. So people who are, whether it was building a restaurant or building an online business, like what specific things, and where they might just gloss over them, going from step 1 to step 2, there might be 5 or 6 steps in between there that could really help someone break through. I learn by doing. So, if people out there wanted to, I've always had this entrepreneurial bent to me. And so I'm fascinated by what specific steps people took to become like the greatest, copywriter on the web, or built one of the best science websites. Like in the case of one of my interviews with Fraser Cain of Universe Today, he gets 36 million visitors to his website. And he just uses a basic WordPress theme that he's been using for years, but he rivals NASA in the amount of page traffic that he gets. Like, how did he do that? I'm so fascinated by those things. So those interviews, they fascinate me. And I felt like I was hopping around the web trying to find answers like that from different interviews, and it wasn't there. So I think, I'll create it. I'm a broadcaster. I'll do it.
Well, I like the ethical entrepreneur, because sometimes, and Rob knows I have a little bit of a distaste for, sometimes some of the entrepreneurs, all they're trying to do is sell you something and bragging. And whenever I hear one of those types of shows, it just pisses me off, and I immediately tune away. So I think if you're, if you stay focused and, are, like bringing these great tips, I think you're going to have great success. So, I'll listen because, I like that kind of stuff too. But man, the minute I get a whiff that someone's trying to sell me a program, and I know you're not doing that, but I'm like, I'm gone. I'm out of there, because then it's, someone that's being self-serving. And I understand people do that and they have to do that, and that's their business model. But I really like the, the how you do it types. And I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by just different industries. Like I had Chef Steve DiFilippo, who runs 7 restaurants in New York City, and he started with one restaurant. How he built this, how he runs his team of 7 different restaurants, and how he connects with his employees, and the tips and tricks that he uses to to make all of his employees feel special. How he brings in people to train them from the ground up. How he takes care of the guest. The guest being the primary focus, and once you lose focus on the guest, you lose everything. So I love just all sorts of different industries. I have an interview that I'm doing with somebody who runs a brewery up in Vermont. It's a small brewery, and they're not concerned about making money. They wanted to build the best local brewery, and they've been asked by a lot of other people to start distributing their beer in other parts of the country, making like gallons and gallons of more of his beer. And he said no. He literally. So if someone says, "How can I get your beer?" He says, "You need to fly into Burlington, Vermont. You need to drive 2 hours to our brewery, and you can buy a case." And there's, "Well, can't you ship it?" He's like, "Nope, you got to come get it." Like, that's it. I don't care about making more money. I want to make the best beer that I can possibly make. Those are the stories that interest me.
Wow. Yeah, I think that there has been, and I've got this feeling, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, but as the world has gotten more competitive and business has gotten more fiercer, right? As companies and people really compete with each other for business, it feels like that business ethics has kind of gotten a little bit lax. I don't know if you guys have sensed that as well. I know it's always had a certain element. I mean, capitalism is not always the most ethical thing, but it's
yeah. You remember?
I don't know,
remember that Verge?
What's your comment on that?
Verge?
I'm just curious.
Yeah, remember when The Verge launched, the website, theverge.com? Yeah. I think one of their big sort of pieces that they worked on before launch was about exactly that. These like unethical online, I don't know I forget what the name of the piece was, but it was about how, they literally had like a boiler room, and they would just basically call up like senior citizens and get them to, or not seniors, but people who were sort of technically inept online, but who wanted to make money. They were basically preying on people, having them give them credit card information, and we're going to make you rich online by doing this, this, and this, and they would just and it made it incredibly difficult for these people to get their money back, and really just seedy stuff that makes you just the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So I think there is, but I think you're starting to see a real movement too of sort of like the craft services, right? The people that are saying, I'm going to make this incredible zip up, right? This incredible hoodie, and I'm not going to make it in China. I'm going to make it here. It's going to cost a little bit more money. It's going to take a little while to get delivered to your house. But it's going to be handmade. It's going to be well built. So you're not going to have to buy another hoodie in a month because it's going to break down. This thing will last you for 20 years. So I think you're starting to see a movement back to that. People buying quality goods again, knowing that if they just buy something from IKEA, this like particle board thing, it's going to fall apart within a year. But if we buy something of quality that's well built, that's not mass produced, then we're likely to have it for a long time.
Yeah, I think I see that a lot here in Hawaii because people are, their dollar doesn't go a long way. And when they do buy something, they want something that lasts. So I think you see a lot of high-end stuff being bought here. I don't know if maybe that's the same in the world. Maybe it's just, as you said, maybe it's a trend. But there's not too many of the, the real cheapo stuff available. Well, maybe it's just its availability, but I think we see that here.
Yeah, I think from a kind of like a technology perspective, gadgets and phones and tablets and things like that, I think you have kind of like a two-path situation. It feels like, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but it feels like that our gadgets and our tech hardware are getting much higher quality as far as their build quality and the experience of it. I mean, if you think back to the older computers and the older devices that we used to use, but yet on the other hand, it feels like that the prices and the costs of that stuff are just they're just dropping like a rock. I mean, you think about these low-end phones and devices that are being sold in the emerging markets, in China and other places where there isn't the economic base to pay, like for an iPhone or something like that. So you have this kind of this dual thing that's happening in the marketplace. Our devices are getting higher quality, but yet they're getting lower cost. And I just wonder how that's going to impact, podcasting and other things over the next 5 years or so. I mean, Clayton, what's your thoughts on that kind of movement?
It's funny you say that because I just read a piece yesterday by, I think it was someone on the Next Web or Read Write Web, one of those, saying that he had gotten an iPhone and he was thinking about switching back to Android when his contract was up because of that very reason, because the build quality of the iPhone is so much better than the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5 is plastic, and he said, I got tired of being so careful with this high-end product that I wanted to kind of go back to being able to throw my phone around. This sort of plastic phone. He's like, I could drop the Nexus 5 or I could drop these Android phones because they're just, you'd bounce around the floor and they're just, the plastic cheap black, case will pop off the back and who cares? And it's going to get scuffed up. But do I really want to have, carefully holding this iPhone that's like a precision crafted piece of machinery? So
yeah, exactly.
I think there are two tracks with that.
Rob, I think part of it too is, going to CES every year, we see the hordes of guys that are, obviously from China or other countries in Asia that are running around in packs with cameras, and they're taking pictures of every possible piece of new equipment. They're snapping photos of the menu systems. This is basically they're going back to to wherever they have came from, and they're reverse engineering and then selling a like device outside the United States and largely getting away with intellectual property theft. And it's gotten to the point where there was even some vendors there that were trying to stop people from taking pictures at the show. So I think what's really happening is because China's so ramped up on making digital electronic products is, there's so many knockoffs available and so many like items that it's drove the price down. And quite frankly, some of the knockoffs are sometimes better than the original products, which is pretty sad. But I don't know. I think it's going to be something that's going to come to a head at some point. It's going to start hurting the companies that are doing this innovation.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of price pressure down on the prices for gadgets. People want to just pay nothing or $99 or something like that. And the high-end phones typically struggle to sell now. But even those low cost phones and gadgets are very powerful and satisfy most people's needs. So I just feel this down pressure on costs, and I just wonder how that's going to balance out with build quality over the long term, or is build quality still going to go up even though price comes down? And who's building these things and how much are they getting paid is the other question, right?
Well, they're getting paid slave wages is what they're getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think there is still a call for high quality goods in the marketplace. So you're always going to have an upper, it can't all be cheap goods, right? There's going to be
yeah.
people who are going to demand to have, a high quality, nicely built stereo rather than some cheapo thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what's happening with Apple. I think Apple has definitely carved out that niche is their own. There's no question. And then Samsung tends to play towards kind of the middle to lower end of that spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see, how that all plays out. And then as we move into, more and more connectivity, iBeacon and context and things like that, where these phones become kind of like really even more so at the center of our lives. How is that going to impact our media consumption as we have wearables and things? The changes that I think that are coming over the next few years about how we use technology in our lives, I think is going to change even more so than I think a lot of people have really talked about publicly yet. These devices are going to know more about our world and what's going on around us than we do.
Well, Rob always said that Google knows more about us than our wives do. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
true.
I think that's going to start being actually exposed in our devices, where our devices are going to be suggesting and telling us and being kind of like our Sherpas, right, through life, right? That's probably a really good analogy for what's happening or what's coming. I don't think any of us have really experienced. I think that overall experience. I think Siri is probably as close as we've seen so far, but based on what I'm hearing, there's some really, really freaky stuff coming.
We talk about a lot about that in my house, and there's a lot of concern. I think we're so quick to, we all go to CES. We're excited about the new and latest wearables, and we're excited where the iWatch is going to go, and what's happening with the Samsung Galaxy, gear, and Google Glass, as you wrote, exactly. And we are a little concerned, at least in my house, and we've really pulled back. I mean, I used to be wearing a Fitbit on my wrist, and I just, the low powered, however little bit of radiation is going for, we don't know. I mean, we just don't know how often is that connecting. Yeah, that's the one that I have in my pocket, actually. So I switched back to this one instead of the one that I had on my person, instead of the one on my wrist. And I don't know that it's any better, but I don't think we know enough about it yet. But I don't think we should just allow for these things and then wait till we find out that there's some sort of a negative consequence. There are those people out there who really are concerned about Wi-Fi in the home and what it's doing. I mean, there's a couple of studies now showing like what an enormous amount of Wi-Fi is doing to babies' brains in the home. And so I don't think we should just cast this stuff off as our whole home is now connected with Hue lights connected to the internet. And maybe we've got, these light bulbs that are connected to Wi-Fi right by our bedside table now that can be turned on with an application, and Wi-Fi throughout our homes with every device in our house being connected to the internet. I don't think this is something for us to just push away. And then 5-6 years from now, we realize that we've all developed some issue as a result of it.
Yeah, or we're all basically living inside of a microwave oven, right? And we're just slowly cooking ourselves, from all this technology, wireless technology.
Well, one thing that we've definitely delved into a little bit is, the Wi-Fi in the home is allowed. I have to crack down here because I got, a senior and a junior in high school that are here in the house. I've got a 10-year-old, and man, it's device central because it's like we're watching TV as a family together, and I've actually had to have nights where I said, okay, no device night. Everyone leaves the device. We're going to kind of hang out, and because we're all this digitally connected family, and we're doing everything. And I'm just like, time out. We have to have a timeout period, and we even set rules in place at the dinner table. If I catch somebody texting at the dinner table, I get their phone for 30 days. That's quite an incentive not to text.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I think we're getting away from this. I think we're hitting, you're starting to see this movement in restaurants, like not allowed to take photos of your food, no cell phones allowed at the table. If we see you texting, you're getting booted out of the restaurant. No Google Glass in certain restaurants now in Seattle and other places. And I think it's I think it's good. I think we've gotten away from our ability to have conversations
Yep.
with people. I think there's a balance. I know people always say, "Oh, we just need a balance," but we really do. And I think when we're now seeing the effects of sleep, I just actually went to Virginia Tech to do a sleep study on drowsy driving and the effects of drowsy driving. And a ridiculous number of accidents occur because of drowsy driving on the roadways, over 100,000 crashes a year as a result of it. We're seeing incredible effects on the brain and the way in which we sleep because of the blue light being emitted from iPads and devices that we're keeping with us before we head to bed at night. And we now know that if you're up beyond 10 p.m., you're doing some adverse effects to your body, that we are meant to go to sleep as the sun goes down. Now, you're not going to go to sleep at 5 o'clock, right? But if you can wean those gadgets off about an hour before bedtime, we know the health benefits of doing that by not having that blue light being emitted right into your eyes. It's stimulating your body. It's inhibiting your body's ability to actually produce melatonin and therefore go to sleep. And the first thing we do in the morning when we wake up is we check our gadgets. And so I think I don't know. I think we're really doing some harm to ourselves by just accepting all of these pieces of technology in our lives constantly on our person, underneath our heads, in our pillows while we're sleeping, falling asleep with an iPad in our face. I just worry about it. I worry that we're like losing our ability to just be human beings and sit down and have a conversation and sit by a fire and have a glass of wine with your wife and have a conversation without a gadget in between us.
I think.
You just think about how this is going to have an impact on us from a human being perspective in the long run, right? And then these gadgets aren't going to go away. They're going to become more pervasive in our lives, and we are going to have to decide how far down this rabbit hole that we're willing to go to take advantage of this stuff. It may be where we have to participate in this stuff because the rest of the world is, right? And we can't just unplug entirely, else we won't be able to make a living, and we won't be able to function in the world at the level that the world kind of expects a normal human being to function. So I think that there's a balance. I mean, I agree with you. There's definitely a balance, and we do have choice in our own private lives, but I don't think we have as much of a choice in our work lives, though.
I see two things too. I see, we have so much hate. I hate to call it this. It's just like hate and discontent in this country right now. It's just no one can have a civil conversation anymore without getting a shotgun to the face of of bad tweets and everything else. And I think a lot of it is because everyone's anonymous behind a device and they can say whatever they want. They would never say something to you face to face as they would behind a device. And I think that just causes the rhetoric to continue to flow.
And it's amazing. I know in television, I mean, on in front of 2 million people and you say something and someone, some troll can just jump on and slam you and rip you apart. And then I write some of those people back sometimes, and I say, oh, thank you very much for your kind words, or I'll have some sort of just quick little response to them. And, I have very thick skin, so I don't really let it bother me.
Right.
But if I make a mistake, I'm the first to admit my mistake, on the air or otherwise. But, it's amazing to watch those people sort of melt as you actually engage with them.
Right.
They'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. I was so rude. My wife even yelled at me later. I can't believe I said something like that. Because they don't think there's a human being on the other side of the device,
right.
when they tweet something like that. And there really is. So it's a good point. One
thing about podcasting, though, is for sure is the audience, the audience definitely has an opinion. And I love getting, feedback from the audience. And sometimes I play devil's advocate even on my own show. And, there's nothing like, they expecting one thing to come out of your mouth and you say something different. And it definitely causes a lot of conversation that I think is good and gets people to thinking. So, whether it be television, whether it be podcast, whether it be radio, I like the ability when I hear a podcaster say something that I liked or something I hated, I can send an email and make a comment about it. Or if they're smart enough and have some sort of audio feedback line, it's much easier just to, call into their show and say, hey, I want to comment on something you said. I think it's good. I think it builds the, again, it's the engagement of the space. You guys get live tweets on the air, so your audience is big enough that you're constantly being fed stuff from your producer. If you looked at everything, it would probably be too much. But I think that
Yeah, I
engagement's
mean, I
got to be
try to. I
fun.
mean, I try to look at everything as much as I can. Like in my Twitter stream, I'm just Clayton Morris on Twitter. Like today, I'll ask a question live on the air, and I'll immediately just grab my phone that's in my pocket and just start scrolling through. And I find it to be manageable. I only have I'm at just around 80,000 followers, but if I get 50, 40, 50 responses, I'm able to scroll through that kind of really quickly and pound out little responses to just about everyone. And I always say on the air that anyone who writes me, I will always respond. I will read them all and I will always respond. And that's my challenge. And I always say that on the show. And people will test me after I do a gadget segment. I'll get like 250, 300 questions, and I will spend the afternoon going through them because I made that promise.
Well, that's good too, because you're not only are you applying your trade, but you're also building your audience loyalty.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've been doing that too on my Twitter account for years too. Is trying to create conversations with people there, because I mean I do think that Twitter has some improvements that they can make. I think to the process that you have to go through to have a conversation with somebody on Twitter. But overall, you can have a back and forth threaded conversation on there, and it can be a really interesting thing. One of the challenges though is that threaded conversation isn't always in context for everybody else that's following you too. And I think that's an interesting kind of challenge for Twitter, and it's also a challenge for us as participating in that stream of conversation on our accounts, because sometimes our tweets, it's hard to know what the context is of the tweets unless you are kind of redundant in reiterating the context of what you're talking about all the time. I don't know, Clayton, if you consciously think about that as you post to your account in response to other people. There is a threaded kind of capability there, but I think for most outbound tweets, you just don't see the earlier and later context of that particular conversation.
Yeah, I think deeper conversations are not well served on Twitter. I don't know where that actually takes place. I'm not really sure. As we deal with Google Plus,
Yeah.
I use Google Plus quite a bit, and you can get in a little bit more conversation there. I don't know if to me, when I post something in response, if I see 10 people asking the same question, then instead of responding individually to them, that's my motivation to send out a blanket tweet, to everyone. Hey, by the way, this and this, because you might have missed it, or a lot of people are asking that same question. But if it's just one or two people, I'll just respond with that same answer to those few people, because I just feel like they're not going to see it. They're not going to jump into these other conversations and see it. It just goes by too quickly. And with all the noise out there, either you've got to give an individual response, or you've got to get a big blanket response so everyone can see it at least, and you hope that they do.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on Google Plus in the communities. I have a certain amount of discourse that goes on in the normal, I guess, news flow, but most of my in-depth conversations, whether it be about tech, giving them someone some help on something, is in the Google Plus communities. Facebook, I kind of look at Facebook now as just more of a place to just kind of find out what my family's doing. I don't really follow Facebook from I don't find a lot of in-depth conversations going on there.
No, but I used to have really in-depth conversations on Facebook years ago. Now I don't anymore. I mean, there used to be the time, you post something and you get huge conversation back and forth about a particular political event or something else. And now I don't see that really occurring. But over on the problem with Google Plus is, and I love it, and I think of anywhere that I have like the most, I don't know, following, I guess it would be Google Plus. And I really love Google Plus. However, your point is well taken, is that the family is not there.
Right.
My wife is, because she's a tech, reporter and journalist. But other than that, my mom isn't. Just like you need the prodding to remind her to go to visit Google Plus to see the high-res photos I took of the kids. Otherwise she's hanging out on Facebook.
Yep. Hey, I want to come back to your podcast stuff a little bit. I know that you, besides the Ethical Entrepreneur, which you launched last week, you also, I believe, if I understand correctly, reading from your bio, you work with your wife on the grizzly bear or Grizzly Productions. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so me and my best friend Mike started that a couple of years ago, and we had about almost 7 years now. We've been doing that, and we just host the main show, the Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe. He and I are best friends. We grew up across the street from each other in Pennsylvania, and so wherever we were across the country growing up, didn't matter. We would talk on the phone for about an hour every week, just catch up, talk superhero news and whatever it was, and coffee and life, and there was no agenda at all, and so then about 6-7 years ago, we decided to just start recording it as a podcast and start putting it out there. And so, yeah, it's been, that's been the mothership of all shows for us, and that's been continued. So we do that every week. We just wrapped up talking about the other day. I went to go see Sting and Paul Simon, so we spent about 15 minutes talking about Sting and Paul Simon and the choice of the songs that they played during the concert and why they chose that, and so back and forth on. We'll talk Avengers news, we'll talk Spider-Man. So that's really our nerd show that I come hell or high water, I would always do that show.
I've always thought that if I could get 3 or 4 of the buddies that I grew up with, and there would be a new dynamic, because what we were as kids and growing up as teenagers in college, and then moving into adult life, at some point there's a little bit of a separation. It's almost like you have 2 lives, at least I do, and I think people would get a pretty good kick out of just talking with my buddies, because it's definitely 2 different worlds. From where I was and where I am.
Yeah, it's weird. We've managed to keep. My wife was saying this the other day. She's like, "You realize Mike is the only person that you buy a birthday present for, like of a guy, like your friend, like guys don't buy guys birthday presents, right?" But I'm like, my wife said, "What are you getting Mike for his birthday? It's coming up in a few weeks." I was like, "Oh yeah, I was thinking about I might get him this new Avengers thing or whatever." You know what I mean? I'm like, I actually think about his birthday, and he thinks about my birthday. It's really weird, but we've continued that friendship in a way, and it comes out. It really comes through on the show.
That's great.
That is awesome. And, it's just like this thing. Just past weekend, we were in Chicago. We have a retreat. My company has a retreat twice a year. And yes, we picked Chicago in the middle of the winter. Why we do that is we basically, it's a working weekend is what it was. And, these guys been, working with them real close for 10 years. And, we go to the restaurant, we know each other's quirks, and, I told these guys, if we could ever just record all this, I said it wouldn't necessarily make a great reality show, but it would definitely give people insights into how our company works and the relationship we have with our team. So, but it was a great weekend. 40 hours straight almost of work. We were drinking, drinking, eating,
Drinking while you're working.
Yeah,
I'm sure that was really productive.
It was, and not in excess, but. And talking about where the tech's going, what we're going to introduce as new products, and talk about service offerings. And, sometimes it's just better to kick the shoes off. You get a lot accomplished, and you can yell at each other a little bit, and, call each other stupid when something comes out of your mouth that's not quite right. And it's a good dynamic. It really is. I encourage anyone that has a small company to lock yourself in a suite over a weekend and
fight it out.
Yeah.
Right?
And you get a lot
Bring
done.
your boxing gloves. Right.
Shark Tank style, yeah.
The just to close on this, the housekeeping came in the room, and we had a full suite, top floor of a Hilton in downtown, and so we had these. They come. I think 3M has them. You can write on them, then you paste them on the wall. They have little stickums on the back. So we had like the room draped in these, in these pieces of paper. I said, don't anyone take a picture in here, because if we do and it gets on the net, everyone's going to know what we're going to do for the next year, because our entire business strategy was on these white pieces of paper. Kind of crazy.
Awesome.
So paper sometimes works better than digital.
So what do you guys think? And I think about this all the time. What is going to be that next big thing you think that helps push on-demand content like podcasts to the next level? Is it some sort of a device platform? Is it the content? Or, what's your guys' thoughts? I've been thinking a lot about this.
I still think it's control of HDMI 1 on the television. Clayton, what do you think?
I totally agree. You know, I've had this conversation every year. I have this conversation. Well, not every year, but past couple of years with my friend Ken Ray. Does a daily podcast he's been doing for years called Mac OS Ken, and he and I will always do like a year ahead show. He has me on to talk about it, and I've been saying, at least in the past 2 years, that I think the next big thing. Yeah, we hear about wearables, and of course that's going to come and go, whatever. But I think the next big thing is really the control of the living room experience, which I still see as an absolute mess. And when I got to pick up, a Roku remote or an Apple TV, I've got to switch over here. Like, for instance, last night we wanted to watch The Americans. Here's a perfect example. We hadn't started watching this show yet, and we watched the pilot episode that I had downloaded on iTunes like a year ago and never got to. So we watched it. We loved it. Like, okay, we want to start watching season 1. Where do I find it? So I go to the website. This is sad that a website even need to exist to find out where I can stream it. So I'm sure you've heard of the website canistream.it. Can I stream it? So you go to canistream.it and you type in the show or a movie, and it'll give you like every possible place you can find it. Maybe it's not available. Maybe you have to buy the episode. Maybe it's on Netflix. Maybe it's on Hulu Plus. Maybe it's over here. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not out yet. Just ridiculous. Maybe if you've been able to sign in with your Verizon account using Hulu Plus, you'd be able to have access to it. So I found that it was on Amazon Prime streaming. So I go upstairs, jump over to my TiVo, my Romeo, the TiVo, the new TiVo, and I switched over to Amazon On Demand. And I went and searched for The Americans, and then it says it's going to charge me $1.99. So wait a second, it was free a second ago when I looked on my iPhone.
Right.
So then I go back to the Amazon app on my iPhone, find the episode, start streaming it for free. Then I had to AirPlay it to my Apple TV to watch it. Now, I know this is like a first world problem, right? However, it's a mess. So the living room experience right now is a total mess. So I know that there have been some companies that have been trying to do it well, trying to integrate the experience. And that TiVo, the new TiVo, is one of the closest devices that I think has come to getting control of that searching across Netflix, Hulu Plus, Amazon experience, plus cable, plus the stuff you've DVR'd. Yeah. But I still think if I can watch a show like this show in the same context that I could watch Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, that's closer to being the winner. I still don't know if it's fully there yet, though. But to me, that's what it is.
Yeah. Clayton, the whole experience around getting content on a small device versus a big device. I know that a lot of the content deals now are stipulating that you can only get certain quality of content for mobile devices versus televisions, and then some content that is free on mobile and some content, it could be the same content, is paid if it's played on a big screen type of experience. So there's these business models that are starting to evolve, and then also a lot of the on-demand content now that you're seeing, like through Comcast and other cable operators, is that you actually have to watch the commercials now. I mean, if you're going to get it for free, you can't fast forward through commercials. And I think that's the next big thing. And I totally 100% agree with you that this is such a crazy market right now for on-demand content, especially TV shows and movies, where all these content companies are just playing around with all these business models to come up with, some unique differentiated experience, and then also playing around with different monetization models, and it's just creating this crazy market for getting content.
Look at the WWE, right? They just launched that channel on the Apple TV a week ago or a week and a half ago now, and it was my friend who's a professional wrestler, my best friend Mike, whom I do the show with, at the Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe. He told me that they had 150,000 signups the first day. For the WWE's new channel. Mm-hmm. The first day. They had all kind of technical glitches and problems and so forth. But here's a channel that's downloaded on an Apple TV device that people are signing up for. That might be, if you could get like a la carte, if you're an ESPN fan and you love Fox News and you love WWE, those might be like the only 3 channels you would subscribe to. Yeah. And you might occasionally watch live television. If I could watch live television, watch live NFL during football season, and then watch my Phillies out of market on MLB TV, Like those would be like the three things I might want. I might not want to pay for lifetime television. I might
Yeah,
not want to pay for all these other channels that I'm paying for bundled in my cable subscription. It's
that's
just a
true.
mess, and we're holding on to this antiquated system that it's going to break soon. I mean, it just has to.
I think people
Yeah.
need to get wise and start complaining to their cable providers, because if you look at just what happened with Netflix and Comcast, Comcast basically throttled Netflix
Right?
and made the viewing experience not as great for a Comcast customer that's paying for internet, and throttled the service so you couldn't watch it very well. Basically made Netflix step up. I can't wait to see the stock report. It kind of maybe will hint on how much Netflix had to pay Comcast, because I'm sure that's going to be buried in there somewhere in there, and
Yeah.
maybe not. I don't know, but so how many of these types of peering arrangements is Netflix going to be able to afford if they're going to have to pay off Comcast, Time Warner, Charter, Verizon, AT&T? Next thing, and I'm going to be paying $50 for Netflix just because Netflix has to pay, all these peering arrangements, and here I'm paying for the service already. So, this is truly, it's the ongoing monopoly thing with the cable providers, in that,
Yeah,
they
who's
can
best
have their
positioned,
cake and
though?
eat it too.
Right. I mean, it's a great point. So, I mean, who's best positioned for the future right now? Amazon, right? Amazon, which owns the incredible web infrastructure. I mean, with their, Amazon services and web services. So, and with Amazon streaming content. So,
Yep.
is Amazon best positioned in a way that Walmart wasn't when they took on Netflix back in the day? Remember, they were shipping those DVDs
Yep.
and they got crushed by Amazon
Yep.
because they just didn't have the infrastructure. So, I'm just curious who's best positioned in that way, so that they own both the pipes and the distribution.
Well,
Because you're
the
right, because of
problem with
Comcast.
the core problem with the Amazon folks is they have a horrible user experience for consuming their content. Um, they may have
Yeah.
the back end and all that stuff, but they got a long way to go to compete with Netflix around content discovery and playback experiences, though. So, I mean,
Sure.
I think that you guys are right on that side, and I think that things just need to get simpler, and I agree. This model that we see today, where you subscribe to cable television, that just can't last. So that's going to cause all those long-standing business relationships to kind of fall apart, in all those revenue models. So we're going to have to remake everything from scratch. How content is made, where the funding is going to come from. There may be lower budgets for some networks that have been living off of this cable monopoly for so long. So, I mean, I think you guys are exactly right. That's the biggest change that's going to impact all of us, I think, coming soon.
Well, Rob, just remember, though, the cable industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They have lots of friends in Congress.
They certainly do.
So, they're not going to go down with an incredible fight. And,
Yeah.
if they can't have it go over the air through, if they can't have 1,000 channels via a box, they're going to have 1,000 channels via the internet.
Yeah, look what just happened to Aereo.
Yeah. And they're
Yeah.
lost, their first loss.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of power there, but I mean, as users, we're all demanding something different. I mean, we all want something different. I guess they just need to adapt. And also this whole Netflix thing, if you think about peering, what Comcast has is direct connections to all of our homes. So that's not the public internet, right? So they can actually deliver content to us a lot cheaper through that peering relationship. So I'm sure that's a very profitable deal for Comcast.
Well, it's, what it boils down to is I'm the paying customer. I'm on Time Warner, and I expect my internet to work. I don't expect it to be throttled for what I want to go to. If the consumer,
but what I'm saying is Netflix is now hosting their content on Comcast servers that have direct connections to the home. So they're not having to go across the public internet, right, to get content delivered.
That short
and that
haul
doesn't cost Comcast as much as going over the public internet.
Cost is almost the cost of electricity. I think that's about their cost.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So when you are, I guess then, Clayton, where do you see the podcasting space going as a whole? You know, you've been in this space for a while now, and
I hesitate to say that it's going to become more corporatized, but I think we're starting to see that move. I think that brands are starting to realize the value in having an extension of their brand through podcasting. And that could be, look, I think if it's good for consumers, if Home Depot can create a video series for the spring on how to build that garden bed, and how to do certain things in your yard, and people can subscribe to that. And there's a host of that that does a good job of communicating these maybe more difficult tasks to consumers. I think that could be of real value. So I think you're going to see, and I hope I don't know. I don't know that I hope I'm wrong, because I think that could be real valuable to people who are looking to get into the sewing space. And it might not just be like the little grandma in Omaha who makes a podcast for the first time on how to sew, but it could be the Singer Corporation that has their sewing machines and is showing people really valuable, highly produced, well done podcasting content that's helping people and bringing real value. But at the same time, an ancillary benefit is that you might go and buy a Singer sewing machine at the same time, So I don't know. I think that it might move in this sort of more corporatized direction, which may squeeze out some of the little guys, which I'm worried about.
But at the same time, those little guys might be the folks that Home Depot or Singer may want to hire to do those series.
Exactly. So there might be this awareness that, hey, these people are already doing it well, right? You might see that move from when you had the like G4 televisions and those sorts of things buying up these smaller podcasts, these video podcasts, and then putting them on their network and stuff, because or even YouTube stars, and maybe taking them to the next level and giving them a contract or salary or something like that. So I think we're going to start to see a blending there of content between the corporate world and enterprise. With some of the little guys. And I think it'll be interesting to watch that.
Yeah, and do you guys think that the whole YouTube platform and podcasting will kind of merge in perception here in the future? I know it's been kind of like an us or them kind of thing for many years, but I hear people more and more referring to podcasting as content, right? And YouTube could be considered just another place to get podcast content. Do you guys see that those two worlds that have been apart kind of coming together in perception here soon?
That's an interesting question. I think, if you look at the way that young people consume this content, they're going to YouTube. And they're not necessarily downloading it, right? They just want the streaming experience with their friends, and so they're going to YouTube, and it's the number one social network among young people.
Yeah, and I see more and more podcast consumption moving towards on-demand streaming, which is more like the YouTube experience, right? You just click play.
I don't even think about it very much now. For instance, I use a couple of different apps for podcasts, whether it's Stitcher or Pocket Casts or something else, whatever device I'm testing at the time or have in my pocket. And you're right. Very often I haven't really thought to download it, or if I'm just on a whim, I see it, I haven't downloaded, I just hit tap to play, tap to stream. I don't really care.
Yeah, the only time I download anymore is if I'm getting on an airplane, and it's usually 15 minutes before they close the door. I'm like, crap, I need to I need to download a couple of shows real quick. Rob, the YouTube thing to me it's just so full of noise. It's so hard for the average guy to break out there. I think if
it's just another place to distribute your content.
It's true, but I think if the folks, I heard someone the other day tell me that they are going to completely get rid of their website. They're going to only put their stuff up on YouTube, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a really bad idea from a.
Yeah.
You have no brand. You have, it's to me, it was just like that was a kiss of death for that guy's show. But he was convinced that that's what he needed to do was to go the YouTube.
No, you always need a home base, because I think we keep going through these tides, right, where people think, I'm going to get rid of the website. Saw that a few years ago. People are like, I'm just going to move to Google Plus. My main blog is now going to be Google Plus. So, and I've closed my main blog down. Really?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to be doing? Because you're going to build your brand on the backs of somebody else's brand?
Right.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Boy, Clayton, you and I think a lot alike from many things you've said today. And it's just, it even goes back to, there's just been this renaissance now recently of, while the RSS is the tech that makes sure that the media gets where it needs to go into iTunes and all the variety of different places, there's, this battle that's starting to range again. Where do you put your RSS feed? And I've always contended since day one that, that's your intellectual property. You should own it. I don't care that I don't want the listeners to have to worry about it no more. And I think that we've moved way beyond that. But, folks are doing stupid things like letting SoundCloud be their primary RSS feed for iTunes. I'm thinking to myself,
Yeah,
okay,
that's horrible.
I'm thinking, okay, SoundCloud's a a startup. What happens when the money runs out or the business model changes? And, or they do like Blip and they say, okay, we're not going to support RSS no more. We're going to take that away. And which they did March 1st. And, then people are left high and dry. So I just think content creators have to be much smarter now and making sure they make the right decisions early so that it's hard work they put into making content. They don't end up getting screwed later.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
keeping your RSS feed under your own hat and in your own place, and that's the key. Like there's no way I would put my RSS. We launched the Ethical Entrepreneur. I love SoundCloud. It's great. Sharing features are wonderful.
Yep.
But to just to have that be your main feed, and exactly right, that goes under one day, and that's exactly what happened because my friend my friend Mike, who hosts a lot of his video wrestling shows through Blip, completely screwed everything up.
Yeah.
He's had to completely rework his entire structure right now and publishing structure because of everything that Blip's doing.
Yeah,
really screwed things up.
We've it's been basically for the past 2 weeks we've done an incredible amount of consulting business helping people move, and then they're faced with this new dilemma of it cost me how much to host the video.
Yeah,
right.
And the realities of having that media distributed, they finally figured out, oh, maybe that's why Blip has shut that particular portion of the service down. So, but I think that's where I think we all know audio is still, in my opinion, still king. That's where at least the majority of the money's being made in the podcasting space. There's some exceptions to that, but
yeah, I really wish that the video side was stronger and growing and vibrant. But even from the big broadcaster perspective, I've seen pullback on the video. I know that the ABC News folks had a bunch of video podcasts up of their TV shows, and about a year and a half ago they pulled them down and made them all audio. And I know Fox News does quite a bit of audio and video podcasts, and they're keeping those alive. And I know that the NBC folks are keeping most of their shows that they've had from the past, though they haven't added any new shows in many years. So I think they're just keep holding on to what they have now, and they've added tons of new shows. And I'm sure a lot of these other big networks have added a ton of new shows and just not converted them into being available as podcasts. So they basically
I don't understand that strategy. That's not my department there, but I don't understand that strategy. When you look at like MSNBC, which has routinely one of the top video podcasts in the Rachel Maddow show.
Yep.
You can't scroll through iTunes or other podcast catchers and not see the Rachel Maddow show as one of the top video podcasts. Why wouldn't they also release some of their other shows in that same?
Do you think
capacity?
Yeah, well, CNBC did the same thing here recently. They had a bunch of their shows that were video podcasts, full video podcasts, and they converted them to just audio.
I wonder if it's something to do. I'm sure the production costs are pretty high. If you think about your live, of course, if you're live, they shouldn't. There's going to be a recording anyway. You just cut in code, and if anybody has good process in place to process video, it would be the networks, I would think. But,
well, and it's all
super
done
fast upload bandwidth too.
Yeah, it's all done through an automation system. I know that the NBC News folks, it all happened in the back end. There wasn't really a lot of producer management doing it. They had built the infrastructure to just record it and then publish it automatically. The problem that I heard from them over the years is the fact that their sales department never really put any emphasis on it.
That's I think that's pretty obvious throughout the entire space, and that continues to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Because
And it's not because they haven't necessarily cared about it. It's just from what I've been told, they just didn't. They would rather have their salespeople focus on selling the broadcast side, and selling the podcast side was a completely different sale, right? It's the same issue that we're facing, we continue to face.
Yep.
But that's a lot of the reason why they backed away from the whole videos, because they were not monetizing it, and it was just an expense line for them. And now, granted, if they had a very popular podcast like the Rachel Maddow show, they would keep it going because their audience would just raise holy hell, if they stopped doing it.
And one drives the other. The broadcast drives the podcast drives the broadcast. So it's,
yep.
Things that could go hand in hand.
Clayton, what's your thoughts on that? I know Fox has been very, very supportive of podcasts. I know that.
I think they're just an extension. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know how they view them. I don't know how they view them. I think they just think that they could be an extension of the brand, right? They want people watching the show, right? They want people watching the content. And I know that there was even, internally, I'm pretty sure that there wasn't a big push for the web back in the day. Right? They didn't see the value in moving these shows and clips and such to the web. And I think there's still a limit on how much of a show they can put on the web. There has to be a certain percentage of it that they can. Otherwise, advertisers get mad that more of it's available on the web. So it's really a restriction, from advertisers and the old way that things have been done. It's not, it's not their fault. It's just the demands of the advertisers. And so they don't want these full episodes up on the web that's with commercials cut out of them that diminishes their returns from an investment and advertiser perspective.
Right.
And I don't know that would happen, right? I don't know that we have enough information to say that would be the case, right? That if these things were available online, that suddenly people would stop watching it on television, and therefore the advertising would dry up, and therefore it would become less valuable. I don't know that would happen. I don't know that we've ever seen that happen. I think you're just having the ability to reach a new audience. And I think even seeing that now with the Jimmy Fallon and the Tonight Show, and the new move for the Tonight Show to have what they think of as their second audience. Mm-hmm. They're not seeing it as their first audience. In fact, they've labeled it that. So their strategy for the Tonight Show is the stuff we put up online is our second audience.
Yeah, but I think for me, I come into the office in the morning and I pop up email and I'll check the headlines on a couple of the news sites, and if something's interesting, I'll click through, and if it's really interesting, I'll go turn the TV on. I know some families probably click the tube on first thing in the morning, but I don't necessarily hear. But I think sometimes if there's something breaking and it's big, the first thing you want to do is go turn the TV on and make sure that you're listening to the full story. But if it's just a average day, and at least that's my habits. I don't know about Rob. I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily have my TV stuck at, whatever channel I'm listening at from a news perspective.
No, I don't either. I mean, I watch, some TV shows on demand, on my schedule and try and keep up with the news on a daily basis. One other, kind of fascinating, example of this whole major media stuff with podcasting happened with the Al Jazeera network. They actually had a bunch of full episode video podcasts for many, many years. I work with them really closely on the Windows Phone podcast side and had a ton of their shows. They had like SD quality and HD quality of all of their shows. And when they were negotiating to buy Current TV to get their cable channel up and running, I got an email from the podcast manager back in the Middle East, and she said that at the same day that they launched their cable channel, that their deal with Current and Comcast was that they had to eliminate all of their other distribution platforms.
Wow.
And that included podcast content. So they couldn't offer their full suite of shows as video podcasts. And they had like maybe 30 or 40 shows that they were doing as podcasts. I had to take them all down. And I don't believe that there's really much available currently today. And I talk with those folks, and they're um, really feel horrible that they did that, because they killed a huge audience for that network. And I think that current TV, or the channel that at Al Jazeera has today, is struggling. It's not HD; it's standard definition quality TV. And then they were forced to cut off that whole online side in the U.S. And I think it really hurt them.
Well, that's an interesting insight, that they had to take their content down.
Yep.
I can't imagine someone coming to me and making a deal for distribution. They say you have to take your content down somewhere else. I'd be like, deal off. You know.
Well, they wanted to get
they wanted to be on
that cable channel,
of course,
and they were willing to put in their stipulations that they would take down, their on-demand stuff. So it would force people to, and I thought at the time it was horrible, and I expressed myself to them, saying, I think this is a mistake. You guys need to keep this going. It'll help support the cable channel, not hurt it. So anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So any more plans on any future shows? You're going to grow your network then at all, Clayton, or is this you're going to see what happens with Ethical Entrepreneur and go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to focus on building this 5 days a week, and just continuing to just see where that goes. The other shows that are there, I mean, I have very little to do with. They sort of get to run themselves, which is great. And if, we're kind of moving feeds around right now to kind of reach structure, building a new website. So that's all that's actually the next big plan. Actually, we're in the process of trying to build a really nice new website that'll have everything streamlined and, everything. So that's really the next big process. But yeah, right now I'm just sticking with doing, Ethical Entrepreneur and Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe, and I've been doing that for many, many years. So I'll never give that puppy up.
If you're going to WordPress multi-site, drop me an email after the show. We're getting ready to punch out a plugin that's going to help folks that are running multi-site and running small networks, and love you to test that out. It's specifically for folks that are running multi-site. If you're not doing that, it won't help you. But it's okay. Same type of thing. I'm basically, Rob and I have been talking about this show. This show's grown to the point where it needs its own property, and we're going to separate it off from my main site, and it's going to basically live on its own and still be promoted on the primary site, but it'll basically have its own two legs. And Rob, that's progressing, so I'm hoping here in the next couple of weeks, actually we're going to switch the site over to multi-site mode here in a couple of days and start putting the pieces together. The template's not ready, but some of the code is to make it happen. So that's some of the stuff we did last weekend too. But
that'll be exciting,
because I think a lot of folks are building. Clayton, you're building. You got 2-3 shows. You're building your little by little. You're building your network, and we're seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of guys that have 6, 7, 10 shows on a site. They've all kind of grouped together, and I've always been a big fan of building topical networks. We did the Tech Podcast Network back in the early days, and it's that continues to to thrive. And but those verticals, I think, are really, really smart in focusing the audience in and the cross promotion on all that goes on. But how much cross promotion do you guys do then? Your shows, do they print standalone, or do you guys promote the other shows as well?
We used to do a lot, and I think once we do sort of the rebuilding of the website and kind of refocus things, there'll be more cross promotion. But right now, there's not. We were promoting like the weekly long box, our comic book show, pretty heavily when we kicked that off a few years ago. That really helped a lot from the Grizzly Bear Egg Cafe. We were promoting that. So the weekly long box with Todd and Leonard, these two guys are like idiot savants when it comes to comic books, and so they buy just boxes of comics every week, and they can tell you everything, way more than I could ever do. So we had them on a couple of times to promote it, and then we launched it. We sort of did it like Dr. Phil Oprah style, had them on to talk about their show, what they did, and then we kind of spun them off. We would have them come on, sort of highlight and talk comic books for 10 minutes, and then we would say thanks, and then after a few weeks of that, we spun them off into their own show, which I think really helped.
So, Rob, what's on the plan? Do we have someone lined up for next week?
No, I don't yet. I need to get on that to get somebody lined up. I've got a few ideas. So there'll be interesting guests. I know we talked about trying to loop in some of the well-known kind of podcast consultants out there that are doing some cool stuff and reconnecting with those folks. So I'll probably do some of that, and then I'll try and get my hands on a couple of comedians to possibly come on the show here. So
it's always fun to have comedians on because it can go from serious to
absurd very quickly, right? Yes.
So have you heard anything in the space on anything going on from a conference standpoint? I know the podcast movement folks, they raised $25,000 on their Kickstarter, so it looks like they have done pretty well to fund that event in Austin.
Yeah.
I mean not in Austin, but in Dallas. So
was it in the city of Addison? I think.
Yeah,
is where they're
Addison.
actually
Yeah,
holding
just
it.
north of Dallas.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that event happen. I think it's about time that we had a dedicated podcast event. It's been great to have the New Media Expo, but it also would be great to have one that was just focused on podcasts.
Yeah, I talked to Rick of New Media Expo earlier in the week. I know they've got some things planned. I can't say anything, but I think we're expecting some announcements from them pretty soon. I do know that they're going to have a blogger / podcaster pavilion at NAB. So if you're actually going to be at NAB, they're going to have a place for podcasters and bloggers to come in. They'll have screen space and that type of stuff. Don't know about internet. I was asking him about that, but they're going to be just inside. You know where we were with our broadcast booth at CES, outside in North 4. They're going to be right in there at the Las Vegas Convention Center. They're going to be inside the door somewhere. They're going to have a 50 by 50 space. So it's interesting that they're going to be doing that at NAB. So maybe it'll speak to something coming in the future. Who knows?
Plus, we also had some news this week around the podcast patent battle that's been going on. The judge in the case threw out the subpoena request from Personal Audio to get the list of donors.
Yeah, I think that was, it was probably a very welcome judgment by the judge, largely because I think a lot of podcasters were worried that Personal Audio was going to take that list and then maybe apply that to their bucket of groups that they wanted to go after. I don't know. So I don't really want to say too much about that ongoing litigation based on my position in the space, but I think that we're all looking forward to some sort of, we hope that we'll see what the FF comes up with their next stage of this thing.
Well, and the Adam Carolla folks have been doing a fundraiser as well to help fund their legal defense.
Oh, so they actually did I didn't hear about that. Do you know any word on how much money they've raised?
No, I haven't actually heard, but I know that Carolla's been going around and getting on other podcasts and other shows and even some broadcast programs to talk about his patent case and battle and fundraising campaign to try and beat the patent. So there's the EFF folks as well as Adam Carolla that are actively going after this.
Yeah, the EFF's trying to get the patent invalidated, but Adam's actually fighting off the basically demand for money, or licensing, or whatever they're trying to do. So, we'll see where this leads. Clayton, I don't know if you've followed that at all, but boy, I tell you, if you have some time on your morning show to talk about the podcasting space and this battle with the patent issue, I think it could use some extra.
Yeah. I know it's so frustrating. You wonder if like most of the mainstream audience would even understand it. That's the risk you run. But it really is this. The whole patent system is just an absolute mess. And the fact that you could take away the freedoms of individuals because of this is really, I think, one of the most infuriating parts of it.
Well, in some instances, a big property like Adams, who knows what the infringement amount would be. It could be, that could be 6-7 figures, and that could absolutely devastate any company property in the space. And then it doesn't bode well. But I guess that's all I'm
Yeah,
going to say about that.
yeah. From what I know, it is a really big number that they're trying to go after Adam for. And there's other people that are impacted by this too. It's not just Adam. That there's been many podcasters that have gotten those letters, right? Starting that whole legal process. So it's something that we should all be concerned about. But what we do to defend it is it's going to have to be done on a case by case basis. And it's great that the EFF has taken it on.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Clayton, Noah, thank you for coming on. I know you've already had a long day already. You've been up a long time, so and it's a weekend, so we appreciate
thank you
coming on. And
yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
And
I'll grab some food now.
So for everyone, definitely follow Clayton on Twitter at Clayton Morris, and of course you're on Google Plus as well. One of my buddies actually shared something you had shared yesterday, and I actually thought I was commenting on his site, and I actually commented on yours, so I apologize about that. But
no worries.
Definitely check the shows out as well at ethicalentrepreneur.net. And go over to grizzlybearcafe.com is the two websites. And I'm sure finding iTunes and every other place where podcasts are at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, check them out and subscribe. And we love the feedback. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on.
Thank you, Clayton, for coming on this morning. It's great.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
And for the audience that's been watching, we've had, I know you've gained some subscribers based on the chat room, so that's good. So,
well, thank you very much.
If nothing else, you gained a few listeners.
Well, thank you. I had a great conversation. Again, I can talk about this stuff all the time, so thank you, guys.
All right, for everyone else, we'll see you next Saturday here. And yes, I will have to get up at 5 a.m. to have the show ready to go by 6 because the clock change. That just sucks.
Mm-hmm. But you're used to it now. Ty, you like the punishment. I know you do.
Absolutely, I do. And actually, it works out better for my family schedule, too, because then I'm done by about 8:30. So it works out good. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Everyone take care. And from here, from Hawaii, aloha. Rob?
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye. All right, the stream is still up, so let me shut the stream down.